The harsh reality is a really bad thing, a really good thing. We're going to throw it around this morning and give you some cold, hard facts on interest rates. Stay tuned.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Good morning.
Hello.
We're back. We're together.
The
Monday,
team's back together. The team's
Tuesday,
back.
Wednesday. There you go.
Back in black. How
First
are you,
of
Bill?
all, how was rural New South Wales?
It was good.
Yeah.
I went to Lightning Ridge, went to Tamworth, went to Orange, went to Mudgee.
People talking about
Dubbo?
interest rates out
No.
there?
But people can talk. People love a chat in rural Australia. Good, honest people.
That's the way. Good. That's very good. We've got a special guest feature this morning.
Yes.
Can you do the intro?
Oh, yes. Tim Lawless. He's the big data guy, the godfather of data for property in Australia. Works for CoreLogic, aka RP Data. And this man, I've got to say, he's always ahead of the curve. I've been an agent for 30 years. I've known Tim and of Tim for 20 of those years. And boy, does this guy come up with some great stuff. I'm surprised he's not front and centre more in the Australian public. So let's have a look what Tim's got to say.
We couldn't bring him here in person, but we've got 90 seconds of his time. Here we go.
Let's go. Oh, Billy's gone. Billy, where you gone? He's come back. What was that?
Stay tuned.
Hold since November last year, and it's looking increasingly likely the next move will be down, possibly as early as November this year. The RBA's decision to keep the cash rate on hold at 4.35% came after core inflation reduced back to 0.8% in the June quarter, alongside a gradual loosening in labour markets and soft economic conditions more broadly. Although a stable interest rate decision is seen as a positive for borrowers and the housing sector more broadly, we aren't expecting today's outcome will have a material influence on housing trends. While stable interest rates and lower inflation should help to lift consumer sentiment, which has historically shown a very close relationship with property sales, the August hold decision may not be enough to see that rise in consumer sentiment flowing through to housing market activity. Recent growth in property prices and transactional activity has had a lot more to do with low supply, tight rental conditions, and demographic factors rather than sentiment through the housing upswing to date. Many of these factors are now losing their potency, with the trend rate of home sales easing as affordability becomes more challenging, migration is slowing down, and momentum is leaving the upswing in rents. Even if sentiment does lift, an improvement in housing affordability barriers or strengthening in household balance sheets isn't likely until interest rates start to actually fall. While the RBA board is leaving their options open, if the inflation trajectory continues to ease, it looks likely the next move in interest rates will be downwards. Whether this will be enough to revitalise the housing growth cycle is open for debate. There is a possibility that affordability pressures and eventually a housing supply response will keep a lid on price growth even as rates start to come down. Well, interest.
There you go.
Wah. So I had a long chat when I was away with a mortgage broker. And he was talking about his parents. He was talking about how tough it would have been for his parents, because in the 80s it was an 18% interest rate. People were struggling with 17 to 18%. And I think people have forgot the fundamental thing. When the economy shits the bed, interest rates go down. So when it's dire times, economically, politically, stuff's real bad, interest rates will go down. So if you remember what happened in COVID, we were lost, particularly for a good 3 to 6 months as an economy. We weren't sure what was happening to us. Interest rates headed down. So they use that obviously to stimulate dark times. When the interest rates are going up, it's actually it's an economically normally an economically fruitful time where they're actually trying to slow down the property price growth, or they're trying to slow down inflation. So although it feels like we're getting penalized with interest rates going up, it's often a sign of the times economically that our market can hold it, is resilient to hold higher rates, and they're putting it up to slow the market down. So going back to my old mate mortgage broker who was talking about the 18% interest rates, at those times in the people forget, but let me remind everyone, and for people that don't know, in the early 80s, the property market doubled within a couple of years. So if in today's standard, if you have a property for 800,000, 2 years later, that property was worth 1.6.
Crazy.
Furthermore, in the mid 80s, circa 86, the property market doubled again. Historically, we have never seen that, for the property market to double twice in a decade. So again, putting that into today's terms, the $800,000 property went to 1.6. It then went from 1.6 to 3.2. So within about a 5 to 8 year period, property prices went up quadruple, so double and double. So that is why interest rates went to us, and people had no problems particularly paying an 18% interest rate when their property value just went from 800,000 to 1.6. They found a way, because they'd made so much money. So I think as a reference point, if these rates are going down, it does give the market confidence to move forward, but it's economically probably, not a good thing. Like they're trying to slow the market down when they're putting the rates up. They're trying to stimulate the market when they're putting the rates down. So it's going to be really, really, really interesting to see how that plays out.
The silver lining here, for anyone struggling currently though, is that the 12-year high is hopefully at its high. And, the big four saying that could be as early as November to see a rate cut, or the other two sort of saying mid next year, May. So that's
How are you going with rate cuts, Billy? Because you've obviously you're a property owner. How old are you?
21. Yeah, look, the rates have been hard, but I feel lucky that I was introduced to a variable loan from the beginning. I'm actually having a pretty honest conversation with mum and dad at the moment. That's come off a fixed rate. I think that's hard to hit. Because although you've had time to prepare, it's still a massive hit. It doesn't matter how much you sort of save or budget for, right?
Yep.
The variable loan has been gradual. For a $600,000 loan, every time the rates went up 0.25% basis point, it went up about 100 a month. But I think there were 12 or 14 of those. So it was gradual. But to go from 2,300 to about $4,000 a month, loan wise, that's that's a big jump all in one go. That's what's hurting.
Yeah. So that's what you've experienced. You've gone from that to that, have you?
Yeah, but gradually. I think I wouldn't have coped as well all in one go. Would have been harder.
It just ratcheted slowly for you.
Mm.
And what did you, if you don't mind me asking, did stuff have to hit the floor? Did you have to be? How did you sustain that? As that kept cutting in harder and harder, did you change your patterns, or did you change stuff around you? Did you work sort of less, work more? Or did you say, was it less meals out? Was it less holidays? What changed?
I was really lucky where I got to move back in with mum and dad. for 6 to 12 months, which, you know, then gave you a rental income. That was a big one. And work as well picked up a little bit, but I think having the fallback of mum and dad was the biggest help. Yeah, would have been pretty scary if you had to sort of stay where you were, and I think people are going through that, you know, but they have made other arrangements as well.
Yeah, I think you got to read the play, make the decisions, and execute. It's and that's what a lot of people have been doing the last year and a half. And that's been, you know, I think that's where inflation sort of come under control a little bit. People have been a little bit more conservative with their spending and renovating and stuff like that. So it's brought it in and tucked it in.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, you know, Lisa's sort of comment here, take on the market about to go off, and Tim said it as well in that little video there. Stock levels, you know, have sort of been supporting these prices. We haven't seen a great deal of stock come on. It was 6 weeks ago, it was sitting at about 576 properties on realestate.com for Northern Beaches. If you call this the spring market, we've hit about 625 properties as of last night. So there's been a small change, but when you apply that across all the different price points, it's not a great deal.
Very interesting.
That's my...
Can we roll out on Uncle Tim again?
Yeah, sure. Hopefully this works and Uncle Tim doesn't go away.
Interest rates have been on hold since November last year, and it's looking increasingly likely the next move will be down, possibly as early as... The RBA's decision to keep the cash rate on hold at 4.35% came after core inflation reduced back to 0.8% in the June quarter, alongside a gradual loosening in labour markets and soft economic conditions more broadly. Although a stable interest rate decision is seen as a positive for borrowers and the housing sector more broadly, we aren't expecting today's outcome will have a material influence on housing trends. While stable interest rates and lower inflation should help to lift consumer sentiment, which has historically shown a very close relationship with property sales, the August hold decision may not be enough to see that rise in consumer sentiment flowing through to housing market activity. Recent growth in property prices and transactional activity has had a lot more to do with low supply, tight rental conditions and demographic factors rather than sentiment through the housing upswing to date. Many of these factors are now losing their potency, with the trend rate of home sales easing as affordability becomes more challenging, migration is slowing down, and momentum is leaving the upswing in rents. Even if sentiment does lift, an improvement in housing affordability barriers or strengthening in household balance sheets isn't likely until interest rates start to actually fall. While the RBA board is leaving their options open, if the inflation trajectory continues to ease, it looks likely the next move in interest rates will be downwards. Whether this will be enough to revitalise the housing growth cycle is open for debate. There is a possibility that affordability pressures and eventually a housing supply response will keep a lid on price growth even as rates start to come down.
There you go.
No.